Zlatan Ibrahimovic is perhaps the most controversial striker of our generation, with one of the greatest goal catalogues in the history of the game. Some criticize his ego and try to downplay his career on the biggest of stages. Others will tell you he's an all-timer, and that he's the reason why it's impossible to accept certain strikers in today's age being so limited technically. Love him or hate him, it's impossible to deny that this guy was gifted. If you went to Dr. Giroux's lab to create the perfect striker prototype, you end up with Zlatan. He was a physical specimen, 6'5", with the ability to tower over defenders and score bullet headers, the power to lash shots top corner without even breaking a sweat, the strength to shrug off defenders like they were just mosquitoes before breezing off like a 100-meter sprinter. And yet he was so flexible he could score acrobatic finishes in the air and was still so silky on the ground he could make defenders slam into each other like an episode of Tom and Jerry. How is anyone supposed to compete with this? It's no wonder this guy was telling Arsene Wenger he doesn't do trials back in the day. He knew he was him from early, and he backed it up with trophies upon trophies, so much so that he's allowed to pretend that he's a lion at the big age of 40. Except this guy's had this aura from day one. Grab your pen and paper, let's take it right back to the start of Zlatan's career. Zlatan was born in Malmö, Sweden in 1981 into a very chaotic home. Being the son of immigrants from both Muslim and Catholic backgrounds already made him an outcast, but football was his one way out. He was playing for the younger Malmö clubs from the age of 6 before forcing his way up the academy. For someone with insane levels of self-confidence, you'd be surprised that he almost quit football at the age of 15 to work in the docks. But his coaches knew he was special and convinced him to keep going. Fast forward a couple years and this giant is now in the first team, nutmegging people with ease and juggling the ball like a magician. 16 goals in his first 2 years had Arsene Wenger offering him a trial at Arsenal, but Zlatan infamously told him he doesn't do trials and joined Ajax instead for €8 million. New manager Ronald Koeman chucked him in the first team, and Ibrahimovic fired him to the 2001-2 Eredivisie title, and then he propelled his status even further the following season when he bagged 5 goals in the Champions League, as well as another Eredivisie title to add to the couple of cup trophies too. Perhaps his most iconic goal was against NAC Breda in 2004, when he took on 5 men by himself to win Goal of the Year. You just knew he was going right to the very top. In 2004, after 48 goals in 110 games, he made the next step up to the Serie A, starting with Juventus. If the world did not know who this man was, they were about to find out. Cause word to Miley Cyrus, this brother came in like a wrecking ball, just dashing defenders to the floor with brute strength or ball manipulation that would have defenders' brains fried. But perhaps more impressive than these thunderous goals he was now becoming accustomed to was his selflessness. Zlatan's weight of pass was at times immaculate, and he was happy to give assists if a teammate was in a more favourable position than his own. He was playing alongside superstars, and yet they knew they could trust him to be their go-to guy. When thugs like Gattuso were clamping into him, he was happy to brush it off and go snatch his chain back straight after. 16 goals in his first season secured a Serie A title, as well as Serie A Foreign Player of the Year. The following year, he was used as more of a winger now, and tasked with providing assists to the strikers. But as we all know, Juve were hit with that Calciopoli cheating scandal and shut down to Serie B. He felt he didn't owe them anything and decided to move on once again. Zlatan was back up in Serie A with Inter for the 2006-07 season, a team he claimed he was always a fan of when he was younger. And it seemed like it was a match made in heaven pretty quickly as he scored on his league debut against Fiorentina. The goals were flowing like no tomorrow and he was taking the league by storm. His first season he scored 15 goals as Inter bagged the league title, and from there he'd just get better and better. He was now reportedly the world's highest paid footballer after signing a new contract in 2007. 17 goals this time meant back-to-back league titles, and now his aura alone was enough to have defenders fearing for their lives. He could lash free kicks past keepers before they even have time to blink, or he could go on mazy runs and dink the ball over the keeper's head from outside the box with his weak foot. Again, what sort of freak of nature is this? His third season saw him win the Supercoppa Italiana again, to add to the one that he obtained in his very first game with Inter. Zlatan went on to be top scorer of 25 league goals to propel Inter to 3 league titles back to back to back. The best striker on the planet needed to play for the best team on the planet, and Ibra signed a 5-year contract at Barcelona for around €60 million, depending on how much you value Eto'o and how much you trust the Italians to keep their books correctly. From day one, he was assisting Messi and then setting a record of being the only player ever to score in his first 5 league matches. In his first year, he added the UEFA Super Cup, the Club World Cup, the Spanish Super Cup, and La Liga, all to his ever-growing cabinet, scoring 16 goals in the process. But his stint at Barca was short-lived. The rapport between him and Pep Guardiola was fractured when Barca lost to Ibra's former club Inter in the Champions League semis, and Zlatan started launching verbal abuse in the dressing room for showing a lack of testicular fortitude. We all know now that if you go against Pep, you may as well start packing your bags, especially when you've now got Messi asking to play centrally and not on the wing anymore. He was sent on loan to the red side of Milan, and he was evidently quite at home at the San Siro, as he continued his insane league title streak, winning yet another Serie A and scoring 56 goals in 85 games across all competitions over 2 years, including some memorable ones against his former club Inter in the league and in the Supercoppa Italiana. He was making defenders look like children children the way he'd schooled them. His respect for Ronaldinho and his seamless link-up with a dressing room full of superstars was testament to his character. But even still, after surpassing the 100 Serie A goals landmark, on his way to 28 league goals and the top scorer in 2011/12, he was clearly the main man. But his Italian journey was about to come to a surprising end. PSG acquired the services of Zlatan in 2012 in a bid to catapult them into the category of elite European powerhouses. They were now incredibly rich, and he was the kind of guy who would love to be the poster boy for such an exciting project. He believed in his own ability to be the difference maker, even now in his 30s. Forget talk of being a lion though, this guy was moving like Kung Fu Panda. His martial arts background was once again coming to his aid, as he would maneuver his bodies in ways that would have defenders completely flat-footed and dumbfounded. Him winning 4 straight Ligue 1 titles might not move you guys, so I'm just going to show you his Champions League goals only. My favourite one is this one versus Anderlecht, where he absolutely leathers this missile top corner from a position that players nowadays would dare not shoot from. And then he'd do it again on his left foot just because he could. Zlatan was single-handedly turning PSG into a team to be feared in the Champions League. Internationally, Sweden would have their struggles, of course, from his first World Cup in 2006 to Euro 2012, where he'd personally get into team of the tournament. But he'd have that iconic playoff against Portugal where he was going band for band with CR7, scoring a brace of his own only to be eliminated by a Ronaldo hat-trick. Back at club level, he'd leave PSG as the greatest player in their history and top scorer with 156 goals in 180 games, although Cavani would soon take that scorer accolade from himself soon after. Ibra signed for a struggling United in 2016 and snatched that number 9 shirt from Martial like a school bully. But as he always tended to do, he backed it up with goals upon goals. His first United hat-trick came in the Europa League against Saint Etienne, on the way to winning the entire competition, his first European trophy of his illustrious career. He was dominating the box and bringing a winning culture to the dressing room that had seemingly been missing since the days of Fergie, even if it was just the Europa League and the EFL Cup. Doing this in the Premier League at the age of 37-38 was insane, but injuries finally began to take their toll, and he decided to take his talents over to the MLS, where he announced his arrival with a full-page spread of the LA Times, saying, "Dear Los Angeles, you're welcome." And once again, he backed it up, scoring one of his greatest ever goals literally on his debut. We were all living in the Zlatan show, and LA was a perfect place for the season finale. He scored his 500th career goal and was given the captain's armband the next season. Ibra was dropping hat-tricks on head tops like he was in his 20s, breaking record upon record, before signing off by tweeting, "You wanted Zlatan, I gave you Zlatan. You're welcome. Now go back to watch baseball." Zlatan rejoined Milan on a 6-month contract with the intention of just seeing out his career. But the way he maintained his body, you would think this is a brother in his prime. He'd smashed records for being Sweden's oldest ever goal scorer and Serie A's oldest scorer since the 1950s. Long story short, he'd end up playing for Milan for another 4 years, now cementing himself as the absolute oldest scorer in the league's history. He joined a certain Leo Messi and Ronaldo as the only players to have scored 300 league goals in the top 5 leagues in the 21st century. You don't get into that club by being a fraud. These goals meant he'd win the league title yet again in the 2021-2022 season, despite the injuries. Understandably, when it was finally time to hang up the boots at the age of 41, he was given a true hero send-off. In an era where everyone is media trained and taught to be humble and polite nowadays, we may never see another Zlatan Ibrahimovic. He was a unicorn on and off the pitch, a machine that was fueled by nothing but the belief that he was the very best from the moment he first stepped on a football pitch in Malmo. For all the controversy and red cards across his career, we can only be thankful that we got to watch a maverick who backed his chap with more personal accolades than we could even count. 511 goals in 866 games make him an all-time legend of the sport with over 20 years of consistency playing at the top. If you weren't familiar with early Zlatan, hopefully this is giving you a glimpse into what his genius was really on. If you enjoyed, leave a like on the video, comment where he ranks in your all-time strikers list, and subscribe for a new lesson every single Monday. Class dismissed. Bosh.